Yeah, I started reading some of the PDF. And I was going back through the website because there was some things I know I was actually interested in. That was a pretty cool concept. Um,
Great.
but Yeah, I mean, as far as from what I read, I mean, it was really really cool. Like I said, I want to get your get your insight on that because it's. I mean, I think I've heard not really heard concepts, but obviously you hear like feng shui and stuff. But I was sort of interested on how you like I said on how you built built your system and like how'd you create the different archetypes because I was looking at the one for like the creative space because I know I have a problem with that because I've been wanting to like create my own little creative studio down here, but yeah,
Sure.
trying to create the right space and environment for that. So that was what I was
Right.
interested in that one.
Cool. Nice. Yeah, we can get into it.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, let's see. And I think we are ready to go. Let's see. Let's hear. All right. And welcome to a new episode of the Creative Brew. I can edit all this. All right. So, welcome to a new episode of the Creative Brew, giving you insights on your creative journey. Today, we have Taylor Stewart. He is the architect and owner of Conscious Home Design. He has a number one selling book in 7 countries called Conscious Home Design, and he's actually has a workshop and a system that he would like to, like I said, he's going to be sharing on the show. And so I think it's going to be a great episode. Like I said, he's got years, decades of experience um, as far as from the architecture standpoint, but really trying to figure out ways for even for people like us, for listeners, to create and design your own home and design an environment that's really conducive to your energy from a mentally, physically, and spiritually. So I think Taylor's gonna, like I said, Taylor's gonna be able to share that and expound on that a little bit more, and perhaps give us the secrets to happiness. So this is a new episode. So without further ado, I'm gonna let Taylor introduce himself and share a quick origin story, and we're gonna get this episode going.
Nice, Quantel. Hey, brother. Thanks for having me on the show. It's really good to be here. And for people listening, sometimes people are thinking, "Hey, I got no plans to hire an architect. Why do I care? How's this conversation going to be relevant to me?" But I promise you, even if you're living in a rental apartment right now, there are things that you can do that the big data tells us, science has shown us these things actually increase our not only our life expectancy but our happiness. And so little incremental things. It doesn't have to be all or nothing. It doesn't have to be, oh, I can't hire an architect to build my dream home, so why bother? You don't No, little steps can get there. And I'm going to share some of those things in our conversation today. So please pay attention because no matter where you are in your home creation journey, you're going to have some immediate little action steps that you can do. I'm also going to show the 10,000 foot overview so you can see the whole landscape and the big picture, but we're going to zoom right into little micro action steps that you can do that really pay huge dividends in our lives. So I'm really excited to share that. And thanks again, Quantel, for having me on your show. The
Oh,
creative brew. Let's brew it up,
yep,
man. We're brewing here.
yep. So tell me a little bit, like I said, and I was reading a little bit on the book. So if you, like I said, if anyone gets a chance, this is available on his website, Conscious Home Design. And what does research tell us about happiness? Um,
Sure. Yeah, right. So as I was researching, the book, so I've been in the architecture industry for 25 years now, more than 25 years actually. It was the late 90s that I got into it, seriously, professionally. And I always knew I was going to write a book. It's just that it took me 20 years to actually write it. It was just a long, it's not easy to write a book, but also it just took me a couple of decades of practice and experience to be able to take all of the knowledge that I had and condense it and solidify it into a very simple system that I know works. It's not, we're not talking about, style. We're not talking about aesthetic preferences. Oh, I like modern. Oh, I like traditional. I like this color. I like that color. It's not about any of those things. Conscious home design is about understanding the universal things that all humans need. We need shelter and rest and food, yes, but we also have creative expression needs. We have higher needs of love and belonging and connection. We have needs of personal development. We need to feel like we're accomplishing things, we're getting better at something in life. These higher needs are often looked over when it comes to designing a floor plan. They're really, most floor plans are just focusing on the shelter aspect of things and not serving us to grow into our potential as human beings. And so conscious home design is about looking at those things from through a scientific lens of what we know works. And no matter what your background is, no matter your economic status or what country you're from or what your cultural heritage is or beliefs, any of that, these are human factors. So that's that's the sort of what conscious home design is really about, the essence of it. And so when I was researching to write the book back in the late teens, I came across the Harvard study of adult happiness. And it was a study that actually it's the longest running and the largest in the world. It started in 1938 and it's still going on today. So yeah, it was over 80 years running when I found out about it and was writing the book. Today it's I think they're going on 87 years or 88 years almost now for this study. And so they've tracked thousands of individuals throughout life. So they were young, they were sort of college age, over 18 when they started, but they said, "Who are you?" And they took their full physical assessment. Are they healthy? Are they sickly? What's their blood pressure, et cetera. They did a snapshot, but then they also found out, well, what else is going on in your life? What's your relationship status? What kind of home do you live in? Do you live in a fancy home? Do you live in a modest home? What's your family structure like? All the things that, all a real thorough intake, right? And then they track these individuals for their entire lives. And periodically they would invite them back in and they would update the status and figure out, okay, it's 5 years later. Now, how are things looking? And as they moved through, um, uh, studying these individuals, and they're on to the second and third generations now because it's still going. After 80 years, people are dropping out or people are passing away. I think all the original people have passed on now, right? Um, but the study is still going. So what they found, Quantel, is that the single biggest predictor of not only life expectancy, how long people live, but how happy they were. Because what good is living forever if you're miserable, right? So we
Yeah.
want to be happy, right? Like no matter with the time that we do have, we want to be able to find some joy and some happiness. That's really, we wrote that into our Declaration of Independence: life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness, right? It's fundamental to our human nature to seek happiness. We want to be happy. And so, the highest aim of architecture is to facilitate human happiness, is to help people become the best version of themselves. Whatever future you envision for yourself, that you want to create for yourself, that's the goal of architecture: is to help people live happily ever after. Right? We even write it into our stories. They
Hmm.
lived happily ever after. That's the job. That's the aim of architecture. And because we spend half of our lives in our homes, the home is really a worthwhile place to pay attention, because we don't want to just live, we want to thrive. And so that's why I wrote Conscious Home Design. So what they found in the Harvard study is that the single biggest predictor of our longevity and our happiness is not the ups and downs of life with business success or failure, with career changes, with health challenges. It came down to the quality of our relationships. And so when, and that makes sense, right? I think we all sort of know, oh, I'm doing this for my family, or the only reason I do this or earn money is so I can spend it on my family or my loved ones. It's like, it's your reason for living, right? It's
Mhm.
our point. We want to connect with other people. Very few people want to live like a hermit, you people people want to be integrated. We want to have relationships. And so when I came across this data point, I was like, "Oh, stop the presses. The book is not ready to go out yet. I need to spend some more time here and figure this out because you know what we intuitively and said, oh yeah, of course that makes sense. Well, now it's not just preference or the way you are. Now we have data that says no, there's math here, and
Mhm.
of course you feel that way because of X, Y, and Z, and we can measure it and quantify it. And this isn't just you, this is everybody. And so it's like, okay, great, that's real. Let's that now we can make that a now we're justified in making that a high priority in the way we design our homes because we
Yeah.
know that's the single biggest predictor of happiness and life expectancy. So I said, all right, what is this relationship thing? I mean, relationship, sure, it sounds like a nice word, but what does it actually mean? What are relationships? And so I went down the rabbit hole. And the Greeks have like seven different words for love, right? Depending on what kind of love it is. They've got agape and storge and eros and filial and all these different things based on, is it love between parent and child? Is it love between two friends? Is it love between lovers? Is it love between a person and their community? There's all, depending on what the nature of the relationship is, love shows up with different, in different flavors. But I wanted to go more than that. I didn't want to talk just about love. I wanted to talk about just relationships, period.
Yeah.
Because the study from Harvard, they were very clear that relationships was not limited to your romantic partnership, right? So if you happen to be single, that does not mean that you can't live a long, happy life, right? So they were very clear that relationships extended much, far beyond just a partnership that you might have with a spouse. So, you know, I started to list all the myriad kinds of relationships that we have. And I found that from my own sort of trying to make sense of it and organizing it all, that if they fell into three major categories, and those are our giving relationships, our receiving relationships, and our reciprocal relationships. So I can get into those if you want to, more detail about each one, or I don't know if
Oh
you
yeah, yeah, yeah. Please do. Yeah,
want to
I
pause
because
and
I know
comment
I'm
on something
interested
I've
in
said
it.
so
Yeah, go ahead
far?
and go ahead and break that down.
Sure, sure. So, the giving, receiving, and reciprocal relationships are really every kind of relationship that you can think of, Quantel, if you is going to fall into one of those categories. If you can think of something outside of that, feel free to let me know. So far, no one has made a suggestion that falls outside of that, but I'm open. I'm open to it. Anyway, giving, receiving, reciprocal. So examples of giving relationships are ones where we are the primary giver in this dynamic, in this exchange. And so those are going to be relationships that we have with people that we are coaching or mentoring or teaching. They're going to be relationships that we might have with children that we're raising, parenting, or looking after. They are also going to include relationships that we would have with pets and plants and animals. Like if you have a bird feeder outside of your house, that's not a pet, but that's a giving relationship that you're extending to nature, to the animals around.
Yeah.
And so um, our reciprocal relationships are like kind of, we're having one right now. Quantel is this is where two people are standing on their own footing, and there's just a give and take back and forth. We all these are relationships that we're going to have with our peers, with our colleagues, with our friends. with with our spouses, just anything where there's a give and take. It's different. It's a different quality than the giving relationship because
Mhm.
in a giving relationship, you may be sort of on your best behavior, like because you're being a role model, for whoever you're teaching or coaching or raising children or something.
Yeah.
But as in a reciprocal relationship, it's like, oh, I can let my hair down. I don't have to be anything other. I can be more comfortable and relax and just have a comfortable conversation, and go, there's give and take, goes back and forth. So those are our receiving, our reciprocal relationships, and our receiving relationships are the ones where we are the primary uh, beneficiary of someone else's care and attention and wisdom and love, right? And so those are relationships that we would have with our elders and ancestors, with our heroes and inspirational figures, even our religious figures. They would also with our teachers and mentors, right? So anyone
Mhm.
who's giving us encouragement, wisdom, upliftment, love, inspiration, or helping us or encouraging us to be just to reach, whether we're reaching up or whether we're reaching into the depths of our core to find something in us, where
Yeah.
we want to be, you know, they inspire us to possibility, to reach our potential. And that, so we need all three kinds of relationship in our lives, right? And so at different phases in life, depending on what age you are and what your stage in life is, you're going to experience a different ratio of the different types of relationship. But over the course of life, we want to have a healthy balance of all three. Because if you don't have enough of one, then it's hard to say, well, that person is really well rounded. They really have a rich life. Yeah. So, of course, all of us as individuals are going to define what a well balanced ratio is, right? Some people are introverted, some people are extroverted, and you have different cultural norms and different personal desires for levels of interaction and how much is enough for you. But that's okay. Just knowing yourself and knowing, hey, these are the three categories, we can start to, once you can identify it, then you can start to measure it and quantify it and say, hey, am I getting enough of this type of relationship? And if the answer is yes, fantastic. Is there anything you can do to enhance that? And if the answer is no, okay, is there anything that we can do to support that and encourage that? And that's so with conscious home design, I said, all right, here's the three types of relationship. Everybody needs it. The data says if we have this, we'll be happier. Chances are statistically we'll live longer if we have rich relationships. So what can architecture do? What can I do to build it into the bones of the very homes we live in to encourage and support all three kinds of relationship? Yeah. That's so that's sort of like the backbone of conscious home design. One of the founding principle concepts is building for connection, building for relationship support.
Oh wow, that's awesome, man. You bring up a lot of great tips because, especially I've been really interested. Like I said, you talked about those three types of relationships, and I know even for me, like I've got those groups of people. There's obviously got my wife that we've been together for years, and we have a really good relationship. And then I have my other, friends and coaches and people that clients and people that I talk to. We've got all these different relationships. So that's pretty cool that it broke it down to those three types of relationships.
Yeah,
It's I know it's you want to do your best to sort of balance all that out. Um,
sure.
and
Yeah,
I do, especially with my young crowd, I find them sort of going into. I didn't know if they had a separate relationship for the takers. I didn't know if they just had that one where like, hey, they're just, or would you count that as receiving? You got those people that just like, hey, I'm just take in a relationship and they give nothing back. I didn't know if they even had anything for something like that.
Interesting. Um, yeah, that is a relationship, I suppose. It's a relationship that that person is having with others, and if they're taking, then I guess they're trying to be on the receiving end of something.
Yeah.
Um, you know, as it might not be um, the most fulfilling way to get what you need.
Yeah.
It might not make you happy to receive in that way at the end of the day, and so I would encourage someone to look for healthy ways, look to build friendships, to
Mhm.
where people are giving, from the spirit of giving, because people want to give. We all want to receive and give love, right? It's ingrained in us, where it's an instinctual fundamental desire. We want to give and receive. And so if you let people give, if you show people that you are safe to give to, that you're safe to be around, people will give to the capacity that they have,
Mhm.
with you. And so, not everyone will have, I mean, we're going people spend their whole careers. I'm an architect, right? So I'm not a therapist. I can't really talk about these things. There are people that go to school for long years in the same way that I have done to study architecture, to study, helping people have positive relationships and fulfilling interactions with people.
Mhm.
That's outside of my purview. I need to stay in my lane as an architect and just say, look, I know that relationships are important. So in the context of the home, can
Mhm.
we create intentionally opportunities for giving, receiving, and reciprocal relationships? Now, making that healthy, making the giving, receiving, and everything a healthy balance, that's sort of the personal work that you have to do. But I need you as a client to tell me, I want more of this and more of this, and I want this kind. So for me, an example of a giving relationship, is I like to make food. I like to make breakfast for someone that I live with, or I like to do this, whatever your things are, whatever your love languages are, then if I can understand that, then I can give you the space to do that. But it's up to you to live happily ever after. You have to take control of your life and your future, right? My job is just to sort of pave the way and say, okay, I mowed down a path for you. Now you have to walk it and live it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
That's that's
a
great.
very yeah. So, the giving, receiving, and reciprocal relationships, every home, um, to be to qualify for what I would call a conscious home, conscious home design, has to intentionally support all three types of relationship. And I took that further. I said, okay, so sure, what would that look like if a home had all those? But I took it one step further and said, what would it look like if every room in your home had an opportunity for all three types of relationship?
Mm.
And an example that I like to use of this, and this is really where the rubber meets the road. This is where the theory becomes practical, and how we implement this in tangible ways. It's like, oh, okay, that's simple. I get that. That works. It's not conceptual anymore. This is real. And so an example that I like to use is the bathroom, because this is a room that nobody thinks of as a relationship cultivating or building space, right? This is a place where you go to be alone. It's a place where you go to, if you have young children, you just need a break for 5 minutes, you can go and close the door. If you're at a party or at some big event, and everyone's talking politics, you need to take a break for 5 minutes, you go to the bathroom and get away from that and, recenter, if so bathrooms are a place for privacy. However, they're also one of the richest places for you to cultivate your sense of purpose and connection and engagement with the world around you, with the world around us. And so here's examples of giving relationships in the bathroom. Um, most bathrooms, in fact, have an outside window. And so if you're having a window in your bathroom and there's some natural light coming in, then you can certainly put a plant or two in there, have a couple of house plants in the bathroom, whether it's on a shelf or on the windowsill or hanging from the top of the window. Um, and what that does is give you a chance. It's very low maintenance, once a week, take 3 steps from the sink over to the plant, give it a little bit of water, prune off a dead leaf, but there's a little bit of that giving relationship.
Mhm.
And, physiologically, um, when we see green growing things, it calms the mind. Uh, the heartbeat slows down a little bit, and our breathing becomes deeper and more regulated. Our blood pressure goes down. There are physiological, it's physically calming for us and mentally calming for us to see green growing things. And so um, starting to make your bathroom, it's just one step towards making it like a more like a garden. And so
Yeah.
instead of just this dead utility space, it starts to become, more of an oasis for us, a place where we can, not just quickly do our business and wash the body, but it's actually can be a nurturing thing, and now you're really uh, nourishing yourself. It's like in the title of the bathrooms in my book is every day is a spa day, right? It's like
Hey,
have your own moment, right? And so, and if you don't happen to have a window in your bathroom, okay, then you can certainly put in a full spectrum light bulb and the plants will grow just fine under a full spectrum bulb. And these days with LEDs, the cost of electricity is very, very minimal, and so you don't have to worry about running up your electric bill just to keep a couple of plants alive, and then it's having that garden space. And so if you want to take it one step further, what about putting a little fish bowl, in the bathroom with a goldfish swimming around, or a little betta fish with the fins. And that way, in the morning you can come and say, "Oh, hi fish, how's it going?" And sprinkle a little bit of food on there, and there's life. Suddenly your bathroom is alive, and it doesn't require a lot of commitment. This is a very low key relationship, and yet it really does bring a little spark of happiness and joy into your daily routine, right? To have this life, to have this interaction, right? And so those are some very nice and practical giving relationships that you can bring into your bathroom. Reciprocal relationships, well, this is very common in master bedrooms, where there's two people. They'll have a double bowl sink, a wide countertop with two sinks so that you can both brush your teeth side by side.
yeah.
If it's your lifestyle and if it's in your budget, why not put in a tub that's big enough for two, a soaking tub, very romantic, or even just for practicality, what about an oversized shower stall with two heads? So you don't have to take turns in the shower. You can both, take a shower at the same time, and it's more efficient, and it's nice. It can be nice to just build that into your routine with someone. If you want that for your lifestyle, if that works for your relationship, those are examples of reciprocal. You can probably think of some others if you tried, that would work for you. And so for our receiving relationships, well, I think it's very possible for anyone to take a photograph, of someone that they look up to, someone that they get inspiration from, whether that's a parent or a relative, or whether that's a teacher or a coach or mentor or a religious figure or one of their heroes, And so have that up there, somewhere where when you're in your bathroom, washing your face or brushing your teeth and getting ready for the day, or as you're winding down for the evening, you can take a moment and look at that image and just reflect on, what someone does. There is love for me. There is encouragement for me. I'm not alone. I don't have to do it all myself. I don't have to carry the whole weight of the world on my shoulders all by myself. I have connection. I have opportunity. And that's very reassuring, and it helps us feel a little bit more solid on our own feet and in our own, and from that place of feeling supported, we can then send out little ripples out into the world. How are we going to show up, if you're feeling like, hey, my family or my friend or someone's got my back, you're going to show up more fully, more completely, more confidently, into your life. And how's that going to change the dynamic and the outcome of all of your little, it's so difficult to measure, but we're really talking about the butterfly effect, right? Because so the mathematician wrote a paper. I forget his name, but he was a mathematician. He wrote a paper called "Do the Flapping of a Butterfly's Wings in Brazil Eventually Set Off a Tornado in Texas?"
Mm.
And it's this concept that says big results are dependent upon sensitive initial conditions. And another way to look at it is like if you're leaving from New York City and you're heading to Los Angeles, but you're just off by 2 degrees, you're gonna end up hundreds of miles away. You're not gonna hit your destination. Like so, just a tiny little shift at the beginning can be dramatic at the end of the journey. And so,
Yeah.
little things that we can do in the home, what is that going to do when they add up? If what if we made little 2% shifts in every room of your house, and then it adds up, and you got what if every day you were 8 to 10% happier than you would be if you didn't live your home in an intentionally uh, built space?
Yeah.
You know, like over years and decades of living in that home, 8% happier every day over decades. It's just that's what we're talking about. We're talking about building on these tiny little things. And so the reciprocal or the receiving relationship is one that where you can intentionally hold that when you're in the bathroom. And if for some reason putting a photograph up feels like it's a little too prominent or something, maybe you're a Catholic and your wife is Jewish, and so it's like, hey, you can't agree over whose image to put up there, right? Okay, that's fine, don't worry about that. How about an inspirational quote, a motivational quote, something that inspires you to be better? You can put that up there, something that you can agree on, or you can have yours and she can have hers. You can have his and hers, quotes there, and you just look at that and you almost say it like an affirmation, and you can put that into your life that way. And at 5 minutes in the morning, 5 minutes in the evening, repeat that quote, and world peace, let it begin with me, or whatever is inspiring you, to live your best life. So that's an example. So I would say take those examples of giving, receiving, and reciprocal relationships and do an assessment of your own home. Go through every room in the house and say, hey, what kind of relationships are being supported here? Is there opportunity to, build, more connection? What could I do? And so that's the big message that I have for people today. Even if they never hire an architect, just focus on those relationships.
Yeah, I like that. That's a great take. I've never heard anyone mention that speak it in that way. That I mean that makes sense. I think you always have people always looking to um, even like I know some interior designers and people like that. They're always from a design aspect. Placing certain elements in various rooms, but nothing to the point of where um, like having those creating those 2% relationships in each room
Right.
and making that work. That's the first time I've heard something like that. It's pretty. It's wild. It's cool to think about that. Even like the way you talked about the bathroom. I was like, wow, I didn't. It could be a spot. I mean, that's and I think when you reframe it and thing in a way like that, I think for people that's looking to like, hey, I want to create this whole thing. Like I know some people they're like, oh man, we want to redesign or we want to remodel kitchens and bathrooms, and which can be costly. Now, like I said, I mean, if you have that, then that's great. But like you said, does that create what is that? What kind of relationship, what kind of energy is that creating in the actual home? I like how you worded that. That's really good. That's really good. I know you mentioned a little bit about having that light come in. Like if they got a window,
Mhm.
specifically, if they're in the bathroom, they have that window. If not, having those plants. What
Mhm.
is the thing about the sunny window effect?
Yeah.
I know my space has a. We're in California. We have a lot of light. We have these huge windows, and we get a lot of light. I
Mm,
love it. But what is that
definitely.
about?
Yeah, sure. So, when I was a kid, I noticed that whenever the sunbeam would come in through the window and put a sunny patch on the floor, or maybe one of the cushions had a bit of sunlight on it and one of them was shaded, the family pets, whether it was the dog or the cat, they would always be found in the sunspot. That's where they would choose to go, and so, and I noticed, as a kid, if I was, hanging out reading a book or something in a room, and the sun was coming in, and suddenly a cloud would pass in front of the sun, and suddenly the room would get dim, and then the cloud would pass again, and the room would brighten up again. Um, no matter how beautiful a room is, no matter how well decorated it is, and how aesthetically pleasing and inviting it is, when that ray of sun is coming through, it's that much more welcoming. We're drawn to the light. It's instinctual for us. Light is life, yes.
Hmm.
So um Right. The way we can put that to work for us intentionally, is this is, you're in Southern California, but anywhere in the Northern Hemisphere, this time of year, the days are shorter. It's getting dark at 6 o'clock at night,
Yeah.
instead of 9 o'clock at night, there's a lot less daylight. And so, as we get less daylight, it becomes more and more critical to have, ways to get that light and to have it because it helps us keep our cycles good. It helps us keep in a positive mood, and it helps us, keep our body in tune with the rhythms of the seasons and the rhythms of nature.
Mm.
And so, in some ways, our homes are so they can disconnect us from nature, that the sunlight is something that can really help us. It's one of the most powerful ways that it can help us stay connected and keep our circadian rhythms, in sync. Yes, so these are also things that will contribute to our health and mood and happiness. So what I do is I look and I say, look, if you're having a challenge, with a certain activity, like if I say, hey, Quantel, what's something you're struggling to do? And you're like, oh, well, I have this workout routine that I like to do. I like to do a martial arts routine, or I like to do a Tai Chi thing that takes me 20 minutes every morning. But some days I'm just not doing it. And it's like, and I say, okay, well, why? Why are you struggling with keeping up with this goal that you have? And I don't know if that's true for you. I'm just saying this as an example. It's a hypothetical, right? So,
Yeah.
just imagine, because exercise for many people is a hurdle. To they know they should do it, but they're not actually keeping up with their goals because it's a high friction event, to make themselves do that, especially if they're short on time or if they're a little tired at the end of the day. They just don't want to do that. So I say, okay, well, what is something, that we can do to give you some encouragement? And it's like, well, if you happen to have a stair climber or a treadmill or a rowing machine, that you are not using, maybe get it out of the basement, where there's no light and there's bad air quality, or get it out of the garage where it smells like, tires, and motor oil, like there's nothing inspiring about that environment, and
Yeah.
bring it into a space with a sunny window where the light's coming in with some plants, and have it be, and have your workout station be inviting and welcoming. And that way, it welcomes you in, and it helps reduce the friction and the resistance that you would have towards accomplishing that goal. Yes. And so this can be done for any activity. I'm just using the exercise one, but if I'm building a home from scratch for a client and the site allows for it, I really like to put the kitchen in the southeast corner in the northern hemisphere. In the southern hemisphere, you put it in the northeast because just the way that the tilt of the earth and the sun is. But
Mm.
in the northern hemisphere, the southeast corner, it's going to get morning light. As soon as the sun comes up, boom, you're going to have a sunny kitchen. And breakfast is the most important meal of the day, my grandmother told me. So it's like so let's make the kitchen inviting. When you wake up in the morning, if breakfast is important, then the kitchen should be the room that glows the most in your entire house, because that it should be like a magnet. When the sun is bright and shining and illuminating your kitchen, that's where you go in the morning. And then, so rather than just going in there and quickly making a coffee and grabbing an energy bar and running away, you can spend 5 minutes longer and either fry up some eggs or make a green juice or a smoothie, or do something that, because over time, little steps like that are going to feed our nutritional levels, right? If you just do
Mm.
coffee and an energy bar, fine for a few years, but over decades, your health is going to suffer from a diet like that, right? So by building an environment that's welcoming, that encourages you to go there and take care of yourself a little bit more thoroughly, you're just the environment is supporting your long-term goals. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So this is how we can use the sun to support us in our activities, is to time it, so that we're in that space when the sun is there doing whatever activity, we know is going to serve us or make us happy.
Wow. That's, yeah, that's great. I didn't even golly, I didn't even think about that. Like from a architectural standpoint, like
Yeah,
depending on what hemisphere you're on, like placing certain rooms. That I mean that wow,
sure.
I mean that's really really creative. Didn't think about that.
Well, nobody thinks about that, but
Yeah,
I'm an architect, so that's
yeah,
my job, right? So it's my job to know this for you, right? So that when you come to me and say, "Hey, I want a home that where I can do this X, Y, and Z activities, and I want to live my best. This is what my best life looks like." I say, "Okay, great, Quantel. Here's a floor plan that would support that. Here's a floor plan that wouldn't feel like you're running an obstacle course, like the very placement of the walls are working against you. You don't want to create extra friction in your life and make it be like an uphill climb just to get your daily business done. You want the home to be almost invisible so that you can just go through your life, your activities effortlessly without the house being in the way. You want it to be at your back. It's like in the Tour de France when they're all bicycling together
hmm
around. The guys in the front, they have to pedal harder because they're overcoming the wind resistance. And the ones that get behind, they draft. They don't have to pedal as hard because the wind, they follow the current. We want to set up your house to where every day you're drafting. You're drafting through your home rather than having to break the wind. Yeah.
yeah.
So that's the essence of conscious home design. And so it's my job to think about that on your behalf.
That's
So
great.
you don't have to worry about those things. Yes?
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah. So you and like I said, we talked briefly about it, and we've got a lot of listeners that's in the creative field, in the creative arts.
sure.
So and I know I was looking through there, actually looking on the website, and it mentioned having a creative environment. What can you
Yeah,
describe that a little bit further?
sure, Quantel. Um, so look, we're not animals, we're more than animals. Yes, if you just have shelter, which is, the average home is like, hey, a place to sleep, a place to eat, a place to wash your body, and maybe a place to, hang out and have a little living area. That's a very basic home. That's shelter. It provides for your basic physical security needs. Yes. Um, it may be beautiful. It may be beautiful shelter, but it's still just shelter. It's not satisfying our higher needs. So, for any listeners who are unfamiliar with Abraham Maslow, he was a psychologist whose work began to really take shape prominently in the 1950s, and is still it has survived the test of time even to this day. It's really the sort of the industry standard. It's the gold standard of what people really need. It's universal, and he created the hierarchy of human needs. And so that says that, like, hey, we have our physical needs for security, but we also have higher needs. Once our physical needs are met, that's not proof of happiness. That's just proof of life, right? It's
Mhm.
now you still have to be happy. And to be happy, we know that no matter who you are, where on earth you're from, and what your background is, there are certain innate, sort of universal human needs that are there, and they include creative expression. Now, whether that's to serve others, whether your creative expression is uplifting for other people, or maybe it's just for yourself as a hobby, doesn't matter. We still have this need, this innate need to be creative. Yes. We also have needs for personal development. We need to feel like we're getting better at something, we're improving, we're growing, we have competency in something. I touched on this earlier in our conversation, but it ties back to Maslow. Our higher needs of creativity, love and belonging, being respected, being accomplished, personal growth and development. Some maybe a sense of spirituality, feeling like you're in tune with the rhythm of life. With the spirit behind all things. And so these are what inherently make being alive, being human, so meaningful, right? Otherwise, it's
Mhm.
just a life. It's just living a very animalistic existence. It's not devoid of meaning, but it's not rich with meaning either. Yes,
Yeah.
and so one way that we could make life more meaningful is to um, provide for those types of, intentionally provide for opportunities in your home for each of those things. Think about the most famous painting in the world. It's the Mona Lisa. by Leonardo da Vinci.
Mhm.
And so Leonardo, it turned just recently turned 500 years old, by the way. The Mona Lisa is 500. Yeah. And so apparently critics were going, hey, she's got no eyebrows. And it's like, it's not that he didn't paint eyebrows. It's just that over the centuries, the pigment faded. When they hit it with like some sort of other spectrums lights, they could see the old eyebrows that were where they used to be. So it's just that the pigment faded off from exposure to light or to oxygen or whatever. So
Yeah.
anyway, he's what that means is that he started painting it in the early 1500s. Yeah, 500 years ago. And so what I found out when I was studying, reading a little bit more about this most famous piece of artwork is that it actually took him more than a decade to paint it. He worked on it little by
Mhm.
little over years, many years. And I thought about that and I said, you know what? That's so exemplary of this fundamental truth that whether it's art, whether it's science, whether it's technology or medicine, any of our amazing human achievements that we've come up with, they are responsible or they are possible because of architecture. Without architecture, and the ability to control your environment, you wouldn't be able to accomplish anything that took longer to do than a sunny afternoon. Because as soon as the weather changed, or the sun went down and wild animals came, or hostile neighbor tribes came, they'd mess everything up, and you wouldn't.
Yeah.
So architecture allows us to build on yesterday's achievements. So that we can keep getting better. That's evolution. And a stable home, a stable society, stable, architecture allows us to, build over time and get better and better and better as time goes on. And so the fact that he had an art studio dedicated, it wasn't just his home, but it was a place where he was dedicated to his work, to his creative pursuit of of
Mhm.
of doing art. That meant that when he was busy with other projects or he didn't have the inspiration, he didn't have to work on the Mona Lisa and he could store it and keep it there for safely while he was doing other things. And when inspiration hit or when he had a break between other projects, he could return to it and work on it and cultivate it. And so everyone says it takes time and effort to become good at something, right? And so practice makes perfect. We know that you're not going to become an all-star superstar, musician or sports figure without practice, right? Without a lot of long hard work. Yeah, I think Seth Godin said 10,000 hours. It's 10,000 hours to achieve excellence or mastery in any subject. And so we all know that it takes time and effort, but what's missing from that common sense formula is that it also takes space. If you don't have space to perform that activity, then you're fighting against the current. You may have time and you may have energy, but if you don't have space, then some of the energy that you have and the time is going to be spent overcoming the friction. It's like if your art studio is the dining room, then every time you want to have dinner with the family, you got to pack up your studio. And so some of your energy and your time is about packing things up and putting it away. Conversely, when you're trying to set up, you got to go and get everything out and set it up. And, you spend 15 minutes setting up and breaking down, and so that's half an hour a day, of time spent, plus the inertia, to do that. So,
Mhm.
um, imagine you only had 30 minutes to do it. If you only have 30 minutes to work on your creative project that day, and it takes you 15 minutes just to set it up, you're not going to do it. But if
Yeah.
it's already sitting there and all you have is 30 minutes, then all you do is take two steps in and get to work. You know, and then you just walk away and you can leave it there. And so having dedicated space for your activity is going to exponentially increase the chances of your success in that endeavor, right? So
Mhm.
building a creative space into your home, building a space dedicated to personal development or self-improvement into your home, building a space for prayer or meditation into your home is a way that you can have success, that you can build success for yourself. You can sort of force yourself to succeed by giving yourself the environment in which to do it. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Environment is stronger than willpower, is what Yogananda said. And it's because it plays on you 24/7, and so we're really built get we're forcing you to succeed, that you really start to take your destiny into your own hands when you can control your environment. If you can control your environment, you can control your future. That's, and also obviously life is bigger than us. So there also has to be a level of humility and surrender. Yeah. It's like surfing. You're in Southern California right now.
Yeah.
People surf, right?
Yep.
Surfing is 50% surrender. Hey, I mean, the ocean is a big monster. You have to surrender to the power of the waves. Yes. But you
Hmm.
also have to do your part and be in control of balancing and timing and carving, left or right and figuring out when to jump into the just right when it's about to break, and so it's about playing your part to the fullest and also being humble and surrendering, and so that's the art of living. Yes.
Yeah.
And so what I'm helping people with, the surrender part, that's on you. That's an inner game, but the outer game, my job is just to help you set it up so that you can win. Does that
Yeah.
make sense?
Oh yeah, no, I love that. I love that. That's yeah, definitely. I wholeheartedly agree. Having, being able to control your environment, having the right environment. I know sometimes my studio can be a little messy at times, but I do have
Sure.
a lot of artwork just sort of roaming around and things that I'm working on. But like I said, it just allows me to be able to like, hey, I can come down here and just focus on my artwork. I do, sometimes I can be lazy. I've got all this artwork and like I don't feel like hanging up stuff, but I do want to get to where I'm hanging up things and I can see, just little reminders of what I'm working on or just inspiration and so yeah, that's great. I want to get your take on that because I know we do have a lot of listeners that's in the creative space and
Hmm.
really bringing home like how to controlling that environment because I know I'm a culprit for it too. I'm a sometimes I can be a digital nomad and I have my laptop, I have my iPad Pro, and I'm just going everywhere. I could be at the
Sure.
house one moment and be at the coffee shop the next, and sometimes I bring my laptop to the living room. I'm working on stuff, and yeah, so yeah, that makes perfect sense. Having really trying to have that dedicated space, to be able to have those relationships, with the family. I know
Sure.
sometimes we live in the United States. Sometimes it's like, hey, everyone wants to go, 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 and they're trying to be as productive as possible, and but at the same time too, like Da Vinci and all the great masters, like having that dedicated space to be able to work on your ideals, work on things, and leave it as that, and have that as that seat, that almost that sacred space. So yeah, I like that.
Right. Yeah. So yeah, it's very fun that we can, travel around and go to a coffee shop or go to the living room and just sort of be slightly portable, take our work with us and
Yeah.
and do that because it can a change of environment can give us a change of energy. It can give us a little motivation or enthusiasm. It can give us a spark. It can get us out of our routine and breathe some life into it and get us thinking in a different way. It opens the doors for inspiration to come. So it's really fun to have those. That said, it's an environment that you might not be able to control. There can be chaos in the coffee shop. And so tuning that out and being able to do deep work, it can take some extra effort. And that's where having your dedicated zone where we go in there and you can actually get in the zone, that can be very helpful and very productive, for you in something. So um I mean, if there's a bunch of creative listeners, like myself, I'm also a creative person. That's why we're here on the Creative Brew. I mean, maybe we can do like a home studio makeover workshop or something, a live thing.
Yeah.
We can all get on a group call on Zoom, and I can walk us through some of the exercises in the Conscious Home Design workbook, and then everyone can go and having done the work, they can come up with solutions, possible ideas that they want to do in their studio, and then they can have a little bit of feedback. We can do, everyone can take turns on the hot seat, so to speak, where we can give them some one-on-one attention. They can post a photo of what they're working on and what they're thinking about, and I can give them a little consultation and say, yeah, sure, yes, I think you're on the right track with that one, and oh yeah, you want to do that. Well, if you do that, here's a pitfall with that, so here, I'll help you avoid that mistake, and you can go here, and just things like that could be very fun. to try to, it's such a personal thing. It's such a personalized thing, like it's hard for me to give some universal thing. Hey, everyone in your creative studio, you should do this. I can't really say that. There's
Yeah.
nothing universal like that. I can universally say, I want everyone to have creative space, a space where they can be creative in some way. But one person's creativity might be playing the cello. Another person's creativity might be throwing clay on a potter's wheel, making vases. Another person's creativity might be creative writing and journaling. Another person's creative activity could be painting. So there's so many different ways that creativity shows up in people's lives that um, you know outside of dedicating space to it and having it be size appropriate, so that and having the right storage and layout for all the associated paraphernalia that go with that creative activity. Like you want to have easel space if you're painting. You want to have drawers where you can store tubes of paint and
Mhm.
brushes, and you might want to have a sink where you can wash things off. And so you want to have the right types of elements. If you've got too much stuff, then it becomes cluttered, then that can actually be counterproductive for your creative state. Yeah. And so,
Yeah.
if you're trying to do too much in too small of a space and it's not well organized, so the architecture has to, if you say, hey, I want to have a creative space and I need to do X, Y, and Z in that creative space, a
Mhm.
person who's just playing their saxophone in their music room, that could be a little 6 by 6 soundproofed closet. You just
Sure.
go in there, it's got a chair and a music stand, and you shut the door and it's just foam all around and you can go to town, right? But that's not going to work for someone whose creative expression is ballet. They're going to need a lot more floor space with some mirrors and a stretching bar, to look at, right? And so
Mhm.
different people are going to have different spatial requirements for the different types of creative activity that they like to do. So, I would encourage anyone to go to my website, conscioushomedesign.com, and buy a copy for instant PDF download of the book and the workbook.
Mhm.
There's also an audio book that goes with that bundle. I think the total package is like $47, so super cheap. But it will guide you through, the quality of your results, the quality of your answers are determined by the quality of your questions. And
Yes.
so what I've done is asked you the right questions. I've gone through and thought, okay, let's leave no stone unturned. Here's the right questions to ask, and so that I'll pull the answers out of you, and then now you'll have your list,
Yeah.
of what you need to do. So that's really the path forward, because it's customized, it's individualized for all people. We're going to meet you where you are, wherever you're at.
That's great. That's great. So yeah, if you listeners, you get a chance, check out Conscious Home Design. Like I said, and this is I feel like this is going to help a lot of people with their space. I know sometimes we can get a lot of clutter and really try to make something that's inviting. It's your home. You live in, you're going to be in it for years. Find ways of creating that environment that's going to be conducive to your health, to relationships, spiritually, mentally, artistically. Like I said, Taylor brought home a lot of great points, a lot of great information. I'm going to say, please get the book. Go to Conscious Home Design if you're really serious about this. And like I said, and we may have a future workshop here in the future. I think this is going to be really cool, especially for my creative community and just people that love sort of redesigning their home a little bit. Um, Before we sign off, I mean, like I said, I know I wanted to let you get a couple little words here before we go, but creative tips. And this is something I asked all my guests on the show. What is a really great creative tip for our audience?
Creative tip. That's so interesting. So I'm here in my studio now. When I came in this morning, it felt still to me, and still can be good if it's a feeling of peace and tranquility, but the type of stillness that it felt, it was like bordering on stagnant, not quite right. It's a subtle difference between peace can be positive, but peace could also be negative, and so you want a
Yes.
positive peace in your life, not a negative peace in your life. Does that make sense?
Hmm.
And so when I came in, I was like, oh, I need some spark in here. And so what I did is I just went around, and because I'm a drummer, before I became an architect, Quantel, ran a drum building shop. And so I was very inspired by the hand drums of West Africa, the West African traditions, the djembes and the ashikos and the dunduns. And so I made I designed a line of 9 different drums based on those styles that I had as my standard stock. And I did trade shows and festivals, and I wholesaled to about 60 stores throughout the Northeast, from as you know from Maryland, actually from Florida to Maine, to Chicago, as far west as Chicago. So, but including Sam Ash music stores, they bought my drums back in the day. And so, because I have this rhythmical sense in me, when I came into the studio this morning, I just started clapping. I was just, and that clapping helped just, I don't know. Maybe it was just internal. Maybe it just gets my rhythm going. But I felt like it charged up the space with a little bit of life and creativity. And so that was a way that I could act as a generator, as an engine to change my environment and get creative again. And so that's a little tip that I could offer someone, hey, bring it in. And clapping can really change things.
I love that.
How
That
about
that's
that?
that's great.
Has
That's
anyone
that's
offered you
awesome.
that tip before, that creative tip?
No, that's a new one. That is a new one. I know I've been doing a little bit more research on actually a lot of research on like sound therapy and stuff like that. And
Uh-huh.
it does talk about a lot of tribes, they when they do the clapping, yeah, it does release that energy in the circle. And then at the same time too, the one that's in the middle, maybe people are clapping for somebody. The
Uh-huh.
one that receives that energy is getting like just as much as the person that's clapping. So the person that's receiving the energy is getting the energy from everyone clapping, but the one that actually claps is getting it just as much. So it's a weird little thing, but that energy does kick up.
Yeah,
Whenever you do get that, you get the rhythm going, you just start clapping, everything
yeah.
everything sort of vibrates a little bit higher there.
Yeah, so for me, it was just about 60 seconds, 60 seconds of clapping, just a little bit of dancing, not much, but just it was the rhythm and it was the sound of the clapping that I did to spark, some creative life force into my studio this morning when I came in. And so, and then immediately I had another podcast first thing this morning. And so I sat down on that one, and that helped me show up, like with the light bulb on.
Yeah. That's great. That's
Yeah.
awesome. Well, before we sign off, what are some things, like I said, anything do you want to share? I know we've been talking about a lot, and there's probably so much. We could probably be on this
Yeah.
episode for like another hour talking about all kinds of things. But what are some
Oh
things you
yeah.
wanna end with?
Sure. Yeah, we really just scratched the surface, but I gave people a couple of very big things that move the needle in terms of, your satisfaction and your connection, and how your home can support you. And so I guess I just like to follow up on that and bring the conversation back to that. The single biggest predictor of our happiness and our life expectancy, statistically speaking, is the quality of our relationships. And so no matter where you live, no matter what your conditions are, do an evaluation. Look around your home, look around each room, and say, what kind of relationships can I see opportunities for? Am I seeing opportunity for reciprocal relationship in this room? Am I seeing opportunity for a giving relationship in this room? Is there an opportunity for me to receive in this room? And then, you know if something feels like you want to make a change, then make a change. It's not that hard. We talked about simple things you can do, plants or fishbowl, or pictures of someone inspirational, or even a quote.
Yeah.
So, little things that you can do, little shifts, those little 2% shifts can lead to life-changing dividends, both daily, but also compounding over the years, over time. So bring it back to the relationships. Cultivate your relationships. That's what life's all about, man.
Hey, I like that. I love that. That's great. That's great. Hey, this has been a awesome episode, a great episode. You get a chance, please check out Conscious Home Design. A lot of great information. Go in there, purchase the book, get the workshop. He's got bundles going on right now. Really, I actually a really cool gift for the holidays. But go to Conscious Home Design, check it out. Uh, like I said, if you check out this episode, you get a chance to check out this episode. Taylor's bringing it today, and so that's what I got today. Also, too, I want to give a quick shout out to my sponsors. First of all, Elevate Coffee Trading. They are a coffee brand that's based in Dallas, Texas, extracting hope with every cup of coffee. You can check them out at elevatecoffeetrading.com. Baba Coffee, which is a local coffee shop here in Carlsbad, California, and they're smuggling good vibes and good coffee. They always have music and entertainment on the weekends and brunch on Sundays. So check them out for all the different events they have going on. They've been an awesome sponsor of mine for the show. And then also Resonant Sciences, they are in the aerospace division. So they do a lot of actually a lot of manufacturing, engineering within the aerospace industry. So actually a new sponsor of mine, and they've been great. But they are between the edges of creativity and engineering. So they have a weird culture, a cool little culture. So if you're actually interested, if anyone's interested in maybe hiring or maybe looking for a new position, maybe a new thing, and you're in the engineering space, check out resonantsciences.com. They have a lot of listings available, and they have multiple offices around the country. And so yeah, they're always looking to disrupt convention. So go to resonantsciences.com. That's what I got from my sponsors today. Talor, thank you for coming on. Remember, everyone, go to conscioushomedesign.com and check out his website, check out his book, purchase the book, check out all the great information to help your home, help relationships, and to give you a creative space that anyone would enjoy to be in. So, Talor, thank you for having you on the show. I'm gonna have to bring you back for another one. This was a cool episode, and like I said, a
Great.
lot of stuff to talk about. But
Yeah.
Talor, thank you for coming on.
Sure, Quantel. My pleasure. Thanks for having me. Really
Uh,
appreciate it. Big respect to you for
oh,
all you do.
appreciate it. Hey, and this is the Creative Brew.